Imagine the dead of night in the endless expanse of the Saudi desert. Suddenly, the silence is shattered by the bone-chilling scream of incoming sirens within mere seconds. A massive explosion rocks a heavily fortified United States military base. Thick smoke fills the air. Chaos erupts in the darkness. But what happens in the very next second? Most people think they know. They picture troops rushing to the walls, fighter jets instantly taking off, and immediate retaliation. But the reality of what actually unfolds in the dark rooms of power and the dusty bunkers of the Middle East is entirely different. The truth is, most people have absolutely no idea what happens next. Before we uncover the highly classified step-by-step military protocols that are activated the moment a United States base is hit, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. We bring you the hidden truths behind the world's biggest headlines, and you will not want to miss how this story ends. The moment a hostile projectile makes physical impact, a terrifyingly precise machine clicks into gear. This is not the time for panic. This is the time for pure protocol within milliseconds of the blast. Advanced radar networks have already tracked the exact flight path of the weapon even before the dust begins to settle. Military computers are calculating exactly where the strike originated, pointing a digital finger directly at the launch site. Inside the base, a code red lockdown is triggered instantly. The giant warning sirens do not stop wailing. Every service member and civilian knows exactly where to go. They rush underground into reinforced concrete bunkers. Securing their gas masks and protective gear, many assume the base commander immediately calls the President of the United States. That is a Hollywood myth. Instead, the first frantic communications go straight to the United States Central Command, known as CENTCOM. This headquarters is the nerve center for all American operations across the Middle East. The message sent up the chain is short, blunt, and chilling. Base under fire, taking direct hits. Stand by for casualty reports. In those critical first 10 minutes, the goal is survival and rapid assessment. How many people are hurt? What critical infrastructure is destroyed? Is the attack over, or is this just the first wave? A base in Saudi Arabia is not just any outpost. It sits inside the beating heart of the global oil supply. A strike here is designed to send a massive shockwave through the entire world economy and test the absolute limits of American resolve. The attackers know this, the military knows this, and as the dust settles, the real response is only just beginning. The clock is ticking. The initial 10 minutes have passed, and the base in Saudi Arabia remains locked down tight. Now, the crisis jumps across oceans and time zones at the Pentagon in Washington. A specialized operations center springs to life. Senior military officials are jolted awake or pulled from meetings. They converge in secure, windowless rooms. The big question hanging in the air is simple but deadly. Who did this? To answer that, military intelligence goes into absolute overdrive. Satellites orbiting miles above the Earth reposition their cameras to look directly at the attack zone. These satellites can see the heat signatures of a missile launch from space drones already flying in the region are silently redirected to circle high above the suspected launch sites. Every radio wave, cell phone call, and internet signal in the surrounding area is scooped up and analyzed in seconds. The weapons used leave a clear signature. Was it a cheap drone bought off the shelf or a highly advanced ballistic missile? Finding pieces of the weapon on the ground at the Saudi base is exactly like finding a fingerprint at a crime scene. A drone points to proxy groups, perhaps militants hiding in nearby countries. But a massive ballistic missile, that points a direct finger at a major nation. The difference between the two could be the difference between a small, targeted strike and a full-scale regional war. While the detectives of the sky search for clues, a massive defensive shield is thrown up across the entire Middle East. An attack on one base is very often a distraction or the start of a coordinated, widespread assault. Instantly, every single United States military installation in the region, from the shores of the Persian Gulf to the deserts of Iraq, goes on maximum alert. Patriot missile batteries are powered up, ready to swat anything else out of the sky. Fighter jets on aircraft carriers sit on the flight deck with their engines running, waiting for the single word to launch. The tension is thick enough to cut with a knife. The entire world holds its breath, waiting to see what the most powerful military on earth will do next. Because what happens in the White House Situation Room over the next few hours will shape the future of the globe. Now the crisis reaches the most secure room on the planet. Deep beneath the west wing of the White House lies the Situation Room. The heavy doors are locked tight. The walls are lined with glowing screens showing real-time maps of the Middle East. The President of the United States sits at the head of a long wooden table surrounded by top generals, intelligence directors, and senior advisors. This is the exact moment where the fate of nations is decided. But the military commanders do not walk into this room in a panic and ask the president what to do. That is a massive misconception. That is not how it works. They walk in with a highly classified menu of choices. This is known as the response matrix. It is a carefully planned list of counterattacks, calculated down to the exact number of missiles to be used and the estimated enemy casualties. They lay out the options for the commander-in-chief in very simple terms. Option 1 is the proportional response. This means hitting back just as hard as you were hit. If the enemy destroyed a runway, America destroys their runway. It is a warning punch designed to say, do not do this again. Option 2 is heavy escalation. The military destroys the launch site where the missiles came from, but they do not stop there. They also wipe out the enemy commanders who gave the order, their hidden weapons depots, and their supply lines. This sends a much louder, much more violent message. Option 3 is the nightmare scenario. This is a massive, overwhelming display of military power designed to completely cripple the enemy's entire ability to fight. But bombs do not drop immediately. Before a single order to attack is finally given, a silent, invisible diplomatic war begins. Highly secure phone lines are buzzing. The United States must speak directly to the leadership of Saudi Arabia because the attack happened on their sovereign soil. The world's top oil exporter must be kept in the loop. At the exact same time, secret back-channel messages are sent through neutral countries directly to the very people who launched the attack. The message delivered is cold and clear. We know exactly what you did, and a massive storm is coming. The president weighs the options. The heavy decision is made. But what happens next is completely invisible to the general public. Before the media even knows a counterattack is planned, the true ghosts of the United States military are already moving into position to strike, while the general public is glued to their television screens, watching news anchors debate and politicians argue. The real action is already happening entirely out of sight before a single press conference is held. The United States military begins a silent, deadly mobilization. This is the phase of the ghosts. Deep beneath the surface of the Arabian Sea, nuclear-powered submarines receive highly encrypted codes. They silently rise just enough to align their launch tubes. Dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles are warmed up and armed, loaded with the exact GPS coordinates of the enemy targets. thousands of miles away inside heavily guarded hangars, the true apex predators of the sky are waking up. Stealth bombers, completely invisible to enemy radar, take off into the dark. They do not even need to be stationed in the Middle East. They can fly straight from the middle of America, refuel high up in the clouds, and reach any target on the globe without ever being detected. But here is the most shocking part that no one ever talks about. Modern warfare is no longer just about dropping heavy explosives. Before any physical missile is fired, an invisible, silent weapon is deployed first. Deep inside secure military facilities in the United States, elite cyber warriors launch the very first strike. They unleash highly advanced, highly classified computer viruses directly into the enemy's networks. This is the blackout phase. In an instant, the enemy's radar screens go completely dark. Their communication towers crash. Enemy commanders suddenly realize they cannot talk to their own troops. Their anti-aircraft missile defense systems simply freeze in place. The attackers who thought they were safe and hiding are suddenly rendered blind, deaf, and completely defenseless. This digital assassination is the most heavily guarded secret of modern military strategy. It completely paralyzes the opponent. It ensures that when the physical bombs finally arrive, the enemy cannot shoot back. The stage is now perfectly set. The crosshairs are locked tight. The enemy does not even know the digital systems they rely on are already dead. The final devastating command is about to be given, and when the strike finally happens, the resulting shockwave will change the balance of power in the Middle East forever. The point of no return has arrived. The digital blackout is complete. Now the skies open up, the final authorization code is verified, and the command to strike is given. In a split second, the silent tension hanging over the Middle East is shattered by the raw, deafening roar of rocket motors. Submarines lurking in the deep ocean violently eject Tomahawk missiles from the water. They burst into the air, ignite, and streak toward land at hundreds of miles per hour, flying so low they barely skim the tops of the sand dunes. High above the clouds, completely unseen by any radar, stealth bombers open their payload doors. This is the kinetic phase, the exact moment the heavy weight of the United States military crashes down on the enemy. Precision-guided munitions rain down from the sky with terrifying accuracy. They do not just hit a general area, they fly straight through the front door of a specific bunker. In a matter of minutes, the enemy launch sites, their hidden weapons storage buildings, and their underground command centers are completely vaporized. The explosions light up the desert night. The message delivered is absolute and devastating. But the physical destruction of the enemy is only half of the story. The moment the very first bomb detonates, another massive explosion happens thousands of miles away. This explosion does not involve fire or smoke. It involves numbers, screens, and the entire global economy. News of the counterstrike finally hits the media wires. The entire world suddenly wakes up to the fact that the Middle East is on fire. Within seconds of the breaking news, global financial markets go into a state of absolute panic. This whole event started with an attack in Saudi Arabia, the very center of the global energy supply. Oil traders stare at their screens in sheer terror. The price of a barrel of oil instantly skyrockets. Stock markets across the globe plunge as investors fear a massive war that could choke off the fuel needed to run the modern world. The military strike is over, but the true global chaos has only just begun. The smoke begins to clear over the smoldering craters in the desert, but the true firestorm is just getting started. As the sun rises over the Middle East, the entire world wakes up holding its collective breath. The military operation is finished, but the absolute terror of what comes next grips the globe. Will the enemy strike back? Is the world looking at the terrifying beginning of a massive global war? In capital cities all over the planet, emergency sirens of a different kind are ringing. Prime ministers and presidents from London to Tokyo are pulled from their beds. The United Nations Security Council is forced into an immediate lockdown session. Ambassadors shout across heavy wooden tables, pointing fingers and making fierce demands. Global alliances are suddenly put to the ultimate test. If one nation steps out of line, the entire region could instantly erupt into flames. The United States military does not pack up and go home after the bombs drop. That is another huge misconception. Instead, they dig in deeper. Aircraft carriers form an iron wall in the ocean, blocking any ships from moving in or out of the danger zone. Combat troops stationed across the globe are put on rapid deployment standby, their bags packed, waiting for the order to jump onto massive cargo planes. Meanwhile, the enemy is backed into a dangerous corner. Their leaders are furious, their weapons are destroyed, and their pride is deeply wounded. They take to state television, broadcasting angry, fiery speeches to the world. They promise severe, unforgiving revenge. They swear that the desert sands will burn. This is the ultimate, terrifying game of global chicken. Who will blink first? Intelligence agencies intercept frantic chatter on hidden radio channels. Proxy groups scattered across neighboring countries are waking up. The threat is no longer just missiles flying through the distant sky. The terrifying reality is that the retaliation might not happen in the desert at all. It could happen in a busy city center or a crowded subway station halfway across the world. The strike was supposed to end the threat, but instead it has opened a dangerous box. The globe is now a ticking time bomb. The days turn into weeks, and the immediate panic slowly fades from the front pages of the daily news. But the reality on the ground has permanently changed. What started as a single deafening blast in the Saudi desert has completely rewritten the rules of engagement. This is the final unseen phase. This is the shadow war. The military bases do not simply go back to normal. Normal no longer exists. Security perimeters are pushed out miles further than they ever were before. Concrete blast walls are built twice as high. Soldiers sleep with one eye open, knowing that the enemy's promise of revenge is still hanging heavy in the desert air. The skies above the Middle East remain crowded with advanced surveillance drones, watching every single movement on the ground below, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Behind closed doors, the intelligence agencies of the world enter a deadly, silent game of cat and mouse. They hunt down the hidden financial networks that funded the original attack. They freeze secret bank accounts, intercept illegal weapons shipments on the open ocean, and quietly dismantle the enemy's remaining proxy networks before they can ever strike again. This is the war that is never televised. It is fought in the dark corners of the globe, far away from the flashing cameras and the public eye. For the general public, the price of gasoline might finally stabilize, and the global stock markets might eventually recover. Regular people go back to their daily lives, completely forgetting the sheer terror that gripped the world just weeks prior. But for the commanders in the Pentagon, the leaders inside the White House Situation Room, and the troops stationed in the brutal heat of the desert, the mission never truly ends. They know that the very next attack could come at any moment from any direction. They know that the terrifying, highly classified sequence of lockdown, intelligence gathering, cyber warfare, and overwhelming retaliation is always exactly one siren away from starting all over again. The world is a highly fragile place, held together by invisible lines of military power and the constant looming threat of absolute force. To make sure you never miss the hidden truth behind the next major global crisis, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now. This channel decodes the complex military strategies and geopolitical secrets that actually shape our world, bringing you the hard facts that the mainstream news completely misses. Hit subscribe, turn on those notifications, and stay strictly informed because the next massive global story is already unfolding in the shadows